Sorry, Mr.C, tell us a little bit about your history and
well,
where you're at now and moving forward.
It might take a minute. I'm the acid granddad. So,
All day, man.
Okay. Mr.C was started as a rapper back in 1982. I was only 16 years old. And yeah, so yeah, back in 1982, I was into like robot dancing and body popping, pop locking and stuff. Before that, with like electro music, like old school electro, and like some of these kids were like 11, 12 years old that were amazing. Like when the break dancing started, and I was like, you know what, I'm not even going to bother competing with that. Firstly, I'm not that supple. Secondly, my hair's pretty thin. It's always been pretty thin, and I thought, well, yeah, I'm not spinning on my head. There's absolutely no way I'm going to bring about baldness any sooner than it's going to happen. So I decided to take to the mic. So I started rapping with a guy called Robert Brown. He called himself Double B, and we started rapping together, writing rap lyrics. He was copying Busta Rhymes stuff because Busta Rhymes wasn't releasing music, and he was getting all these New York mixtapes. So he was using his lyrics, pretending they were his. And there's me writing to keep up. Do you know what I mean? So it was really good for me actually because I had to keep up with my mate, and they were badass lyrics. So that sort of got me going as a street rapper when I was 16, 17, 18. By the time I got to 18, I started rapping a little bit in clubs. I went to the Camden Palace and saw Colin Favor was DJing there with a guy called Chris Forbes. And I went up and said to them, can I get on the mic? And they're like, no. I'm like, said, come on, look, I'm a rapper, I'm really good. And Colin's like, really? I said, yeah, come here. And as he's come over, I started rapping in his ear, and he was quite blown away. He's gone, all right, I'll get you on the mic. So he's got me on the mic, I've started rapping.
There and then, yeah.
There and then, yeah.
Nice.
Started rapping, and the place went nuts. So that was like one of my first times that was my first time in London on a mic. I had rapped the previous year when I was only 17 in Tenerife in Playa de las Americas in a club right in the middle of the Playa de las Americas complex. And yeah, so that was my first time in a club. I rapped there, and then the DJ was all about it. He was like, come back and do that every week, like every day while you're here. It was a week-long holiday, so I was there rapping every night, showing off, getting loads of attention from girls and getting loads of free booze, so that was all right. And yeah, but so it went from there as a rapper. I was away on Her Majesty's service for a little while in 1985, and then when I returned, hit the scene hard. Started working with Jasper the Vinyl Junkie on LWR Radio, and also Ron Tom on LWR Radio. Ron Tom was in the LWR Soul Syndicate, and I used to rap with him everywhere. And Jasper the Vinyl Junkie, I did all these radio jingles and rapped with him at the Cricketers in Chertsey and like all different club nights that he was doing. So I got really well known as a rapper in London. Also working with the Zoo Experience around here in the YMCA in Tottenham Court Road, which was not Zoo Experience, it was Raw. The Raw in Tottenham Court Road. With Dave Durrell, who went on to do Mars, Pump Up the Volume. Yeah. So I was rapping there quite a lot, and also with various DJs on Kiss. There was a DJ called Tosca on Kiss FM. I used to rap with him. Another place just up in Euston called the New Ambassadors. Rapped down there for those guys, and got really well known around London as a rapper. Working again at the Camden Palace, working with Eddie Richards, and then in 1986, Eddie basically said, would I go into the studio with him and make a tune? So I'm like, yeah, great. So I went up to his studio in Milton Keynes, and it made this really deep house track. I thought, well, it's not quite right for a rap, it's too deep. So I said, well, can I do a spoken word on this? He's like, yeah, great. So I did a spoken word about the powers of meditation and positive thinking. Right. And that was the first tune I ever made. That was late 86, and that got released in summer 87 in August. And it was at that point I decided, right, I need to go a step further. Instead of just doing vocals and being a vocalist, I need to DJ, I need to learn production. So I started DJing immediately in autumn 87, playing at like underground parties, like in people's houses and stuff like that, like ghetto style parties. And then in February 2008, I started my own night at the HQ in Camden Lock called Fantasy, and booked my favourite DJs, Eddie Richards, Colin Favor, Kid Bachelor, to come and DJ with me. And then it went from there. I met Paul Rip, Paul Stone, who's actually real name is, but Paul Rip, he came down and he was looking for Kid Bachelor, but saw it was my night, so out of respect said, like, I wanted to book Kid, and I'm like, well, why don't you book all of us? We're a crew,
collective,
you're a collective, we've got a good people, we've got a good following. But all of us, he's like, I didn't know you was a DJ. And I said, well, listen to me play later on. He said, so he only knew me as a rapper, as most people did. So yeah, like we had a great night. We all smashed it. And then he was like, yeah, great, let's do this. And he had a place in Eversholt Street in Euston. It was like a basement. And that was the first RIP party. And I think that was in March or April of 1988. So we did that, and that was wicked. From there, he found Clink Street in London Bridge and started doing the parties there. But that's a whole other story.
We're going to visit that. Sure,
yeah, we're going to go there. We'll talk about that when we get there. Yeah. So we did Clink Street. That was where I really cut my teeth as a DJ. And then from there, it all developed. And as a DJ, I carried on making a few records. And then I also met the Shaman in 1988 at Clink Street. Well, the manager, Charles Kosh, moved down to London to get a publishing deal and a record label deal for the band, who were at that point an indie rock band, like sort of psychedelic indie rock. And like he's moved down here, discovered Clink Street, like blown away as everybody was by what was going on here, and he's got up to the boys and he said, you know, you need to come down to London and check out this acid house scene. You're a psychedelic band, acid house is pure psychedelia, come and check it out. They moved down, fell in love, squatted, changed their blueprint from rock to dance, and it went from there. So yeah, and then my career continued. I did, it was in 1989, they asked me to get involved with the band and do a rap on a song called Move Any Mountain. So I said, yeah, great, I like the name of the band, The Shaman. I'd read about shamanism a couple of years earlier, Carlos Castaneda's the Yaka Way of Knowledge and stuff like that. So I always found that an interesting subject anyway. And the song Move Any Mountain was about being positive and being able to move mountains if you really go for it, and if you believe in yourself. And that went with what my first tune was about, meditation and positive thinking. So it really fitted with what I was into, And it wasn't really my style because it was quite alternative and a bit white. You know, I'm a soul boy. I was brought up on funk, soul, disco, reggae. So it was a bit white, but I thought with my input as a rapper, you know, I thought we could help them really make something big. The tune blew up. It became a cult classic immediately. After that, the band asked me to join the band as a full member because for about a year and a half I was only appearing as a guest vocalist and maybe doing the odd DJ stint. But basically, we reshot the video in May '91 because it was the label wanted to re-release it
for the charts.
Because it had got to number 53 in the pop charts, but it still maintained that momentum for a year and a half. So with a new push, with it could blow up with a new labels. We signed to One Little Indian Records, and they wanted to put big money into it. So we shot a new video in Tenerife, and sadly, one of the members, Will Sinnott, he died right after the video shoot on vacation in the Canary Islands. So that was really sad. We was going to stop the band, but we had a lot of emails from fans and messages from fans saying please keep it going. Colin asked me if I was in still and I wanted to do it. I said yes, I'm in. He also asked Plavka Lonok if she wanted to stay as a singer, but she said no. She also worked with Jam and Spoon, so she went in a different direction, and we started writing the Boss Drum album. The rest is history. That my DJ career obviously continued to grow from there.
Was you doing a lot of live shows as a Shaman?
We was doing, as a Shaman. We were touring the world. We did 3 world tours. We were headlining Glastonbury Festival on a Saturday night, and headlining big festivals all around the world. So yeah, we was touring doing a world tour as a band, and it worked great. The other side of me, as Mr.C, I kept that very underground. I think I even went more underground once the Shaman kicked in. It was a bit like balance. I don't know, I mean, as a DJ, I've always played underground house and techno, and I didn't want that to change. That's my passion. And I didn't, because all of a sudden I become a pop star, I didn't want to become a commercial DJ and play lowest common denominator chart music. And I could have earned thousands like that, but it just wasn't where my heart was. So I stuck with it. Well, when I got my first paycheck with the Shaman, I was able to start Plink Plonk Records and build the Watershed studio. And I always said, anything that I do with my career, with the Shaman as a pop band, I'm going to pump that all back into the underground. So I didn't buy a house, I didn't buy a car, I pumped all the money into Plink Plonk Records, which I started with Paul Rip, who've done Clink Street parties. And we started this new label, and I built a studio, like high-end, spent 150 grand on studio equipment and stuff like that. And there's loads of police around here in London. There you go, we were. Okay. So I started Blink Plonk Records, started doing underground warehouse parties, illegal warehouse parties. Through 91 I was doing the illegal warehouse parties called Release with Nathan Coles from Wiggle. And then like 92 when I got the, in 92 I changed the name of it because it was getting too big. Didn't want it to be any bigger than 500 people. So I changed that and started doing parties called Harmony with a guy called Unique, DJ Unique. And then in at the end of 92 into 93 when I started the label, I started doing the drop parties in Farringdon, and then in 94 we did the Cyclone parties and we started Vapor Space, and that was when it started getting big. Vapor Space started for 200 people in Holborn, then we moved to the site in Piccadilly, which was formerly Xenon's, which held about 700, and then from there we went to the Fridge in Brixton. That's huge. So like Vapor Space started getting really big, and we did that through 95, and then I opened this place in December 95 and stopped doing any other parties because of my concentration then became on here. My DJ career continued. Blink Plonk Records, I finished Blink Plonk Records in 98, but in 95 when I started here, beginning of 96, we started End Recordings. Right, so I was also recording on End Recordings, at first just as Killer Loop with Leo, and then after we agreed that the Shaman thing was finished, Mr.C was then freed of his contract as an exclusive, so that was when I started recording as Mr.C in 98. Before that I recorded as Somnambulist with Paul Rib. I recorded as Mantrak was my solo name, Mantra C. Yeah, so it goes with the meditation thing. So I called myself Mantrak on Blink Plonk, the Somnambulist, and I had a fantastic project with a guy called Jai Jones as Animus Amor, which I'm still very proud of to this day, which went on a cultural music label in America. So yeah, it continued from there. I carried on DJing. We was here for 13 years. I started Super Freak in 92 here at the end.
Yeah, tell us about Super Freak.
Yeah, so we started Super Freak here, and you know, did that as a monthly in the main room on a Saturday night. Then switched it to weekly after doing weekly events in Ibiza at Club Underground. It was so successful. I wanted to emulate that community, so instead of doing a monthly, we did a weekly here in AKA. Yep. And would move it downstairs into the room 2 at the end on Sundays, and then room 1, and then AKA. No, it was we finished. We start at like 10 o'clock at night and finish at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So you know, it was a nighttime event, and that was how it stayed. It was weekly for a couple of years, and then I decided it was a bit much and went down to monthly, and carried on monthly right up until we closed the end in January 2009. After that, we moved to Centre Point. Don't know if you can see it from here. It's a building. It's a centre building. It's basically, you can't see it from here, but it's right behind here. And it was this building is called Centre Point because it's the epicentre of London. So we did 3 years on the top of Centre Point, and that was a bit of a dream come true because I always said when I was younger, wouldn't it be amazing if you could do a party on top of there with these amazing views of London? And we went on to do it. So yeah, that continued, and then a year ago. I moved from here to doing one-off parties. I've been doing Fabric twice a year for 3 years now, January and July. Yeah, we just did it on Saturday. Amazing party. So that's good because it's always Super Freak label showcases. I also continue doing Super Freak as one-offs all around the world, done tours of South America, done 6 seasons in Ibiza, tours in North America, one-off gigs all around Europe as Super Freak. The label I relaunched in March of last year. I've already had 25 releases since that time. Wow. So it's very prolific as a label.
Vinyl as well?
Last year we only did 4 pieces of vinyl, so it's basically a digital label. Yep. But I'm going to be doing vinyl at the end of this year. I'm going to start doing more vinyl again, and they will be exclusively vinyl only releases. There won't be any digital versions of that, but the digital will still carry on releasing every 3 weeks or so with a fresh release. And that brings us up to date. Here we are standing outside what is formerly known as The End, doing a nice interview with you guys.
Oh good. So Super Freak is a brand that's still going strong.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's going to head in the future?
Well, it's hard to say. I want to keep it boutique. I don't want to be one of these big 5,000 people things. Yep. But never say no. Excuse me, bit of a runny nose. Never say never. Anything can happen with Super Freak. I'm doing underground warehouse parties in LA, 2 or 3 a year. I'm doing parties at Hollywood's newest club called Sound, which is amazing. I'm doing Super Freak at WMC, at Aid. I've done one already. I'm going to continue doing that. I do the BPM parties down in Mexico with Super Freak. Next year I'm going to make an inroad to the Sona parties. I tried this year, but my venue fell through. Okay. So I wanted to make inroads to that, but I want to continue doing underground parties the world over. And like I say, I want to keep it boutique. 500-600 people, 700 people, but definitely below 1,000, because then you don't have to compromise the music. Yeah. Super Freak as a label and as a party culture is about cutting edge house and techno, contemporary house and techno, music that's quality, made for adults who are into quality. And it's the same with the parties. It's very adult. We get a very good dressed up adult sexy crowd who are specialists in music. They want to listen to good quality cutting edge house and techno, and with like-minded people that want to have a lot of fun. So that's what Super Freak is about, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Continue like that. My next one is next week. I'm doing an illegal warehouse party in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the home of house.
Yes.
That's one question.
Yes.
How are the Americans receiving the parties down in LA?
The Americans love it. America has always had a really good underground culture. Let's bear in mind that house comes from Chicago, garage comes from New York, and techno comes from Detroit. So it's ingrained into the history of America, and it comes from disco. And yeah, a lot of the house and techno was inspired by the first new wave music that was coming out of England. People like Kraftwerk from Germany, and Can from Germany, and British bands. So they took that electronic sound and added it with disco to come up with house and techno. Basically, it was a very gay thing in Chicago and New York, and it was a very black underground thing in Detroit. It never really escaped that. So here in Europe, when we did that, especially here in England, in Manchester and in London, we took American music and we made a culture out of it. Rave culture comes from here. It comes from Clink Street. It comes from the Hacienda. That's where rave culture was born. It was born here in London and Manchester, and it was like the Brits that made the culture happen. We then brought the DJs over here. They were blown away. I remember bringing Frankie Bones, Little Louis Vega in like '88, and they were like, "Whoa, what is this?" Doing Clink Street. We had the Jungle Brothers come, and they were blown away. We had to basically make a culture, and then that came from American music, and then export that culture back to America. It took a long time for it to really kick off, like it has now. The last 4 or 5 years, it's really blown up in America, and it's still getting bigger by the minute. Yeah. But there has always been an underground dance music culture in all the major cities. So if you're talking LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Miami, Boston, there's always been that underground culture. They've always been there. So it's nice to see that the kids in America have taken it on board, and a lot of these kids that are listening to dance music now, they listen to their parents playing it or their big brothers. So it has something ingrained from their family. So yeah. I think that's why it's taken a bit longer in America, but now it's huge and it's a worldwide phenomenon.
I've just toured America for 3 months filming a TV series. I've seen it firsthand. It's good to see the kids embracing it.
It really is, and it's good to see that with all this commercial EDM nonsense that's going on, it's great to see that the kids are biting, because these kids are 18, 19, 20. They're wearing fluffy boots and got dummies in their mouths, and they look a bit silly and that, but they're getting into dance music. Yeah. And when those kids are 23, 24, 25, and they're starting to discover nice restaurants and decent wine and nice clothes, and they're going to also be discovering quality adult contemporary dance music that we know as house and techno. So it's all good. I think it's all good that, for the scene, what's going on in America right now, and hopefully it will give birth to some amazing new producers and DJs.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Nice one.
Let's get over to Clink Street.
Get over to Clink Street, over to London Bridge.
Oh, good.